My name is Jeannie. I'm 29 years old and I'm standing in my mother's living room holding the deed to her house. She's on her knees begging me not to evict her, tears streaming down her face. You want to know how we got here? It started 18 years ago when I was 11. My mother left for a month-long European vacation with her boyfriend and handed me $2. $2 for 30 days. When she returned, she found something she never expected. Before we begin this story, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. If you've ever felt abandoned or betrayed by someone who should have protected you, please hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, you'll want to hear how a helpless 11-year-old turned the tables on the person who failed her most. Let's dive into what really happened during those 30 days that changed everything. Living in Phoenix, Arizona with my divorced mother Diane wasn't always bad. Before Derek came along, we had movie nights, made cookies together, and she'd braid my hair while telling me stories. But 6 months into dating Derek, this wealthy businessman who drove a Mercedes and wore $1,000 suits, everything changed. Mom started obsessing over designer bags, getting her nails done weekly, and speaking differently, using words like exquisite and divine for the simplest things. She'd stare at herself in mirrors, constantly asking if she looked young enough, pretty enough, rich enough. I watched my warm, caring mother transform into someone I barely recognized, someone who looked at me less like her daughter and more like an inconvenience. That morning started like any other Tuesday. I was eating cereal at our small kitchen table when Mom walked in wearing a silk robe Derek had bought her, her face glowing with excitement. "Sweetie, I have wonderful news," she said, pouring herself coffee from our old machine that she now called dreadfully outdated. She sat across from me, her perfectly manicured nails tapping the table. "Derek's taking me to Europe. We leave tomorrow morning for an entire month. Paris, Rome, Barcelona, can you imagine?" My spoon froze halfway to my mouth. "What about me?" I asked. "What about school?" She waved her hand dismissively. "School's almost out for summer anyway. You'll manage." Then she reached into her purse and pulled out her wallet. I thought maybe she was going to give me money for groceries, for emergency supplies, something reasonable. Instead, she placed $2 bills on the table. "This should be enough. You're 11 now, practically a young woman. Time to learn some independence." Derek appeared in the doorway, then his cologne filling the kitchen. He looked at me with that familiar smirk, the one he wore whenever Mom wasn't looking directly at him. "Don't look so glum, kiddo," he said, though his tone suggested he couldn't care less about my feelings. "Your mother deserves this trip. She's been stuck in this dump long enough." He wrapped his arms around her waist, and she melted into him, giggling like a teenager. "Besides," he continued, his eyes cold as they met mine, "it'll be good for you to learn you can't always rely on Mommy. The real world doesn't coddle little burdens." Mom didn't correct him. She didn't even flinch at him calling me a burden. Instead, she nodded and said, "This is my chance at happiness, Jeannie. Real happiness, the kind I've never had before. You understand, don't you? Sometimes adults need to prioritize themselves." I understood perfectly. I understood that her new designer clothes hanging in the closet were more important than making sure I had food. I understood that her happiness with Derek mattered more than my safety. I understood that I had become the thing standing between her and the life she wanted. That first week alone taught me more about survival than any classroom ever could. After Mom's taxi disappeared down our street, I stood in the kitchen taking inventory. We had half a box of stale cereal, 3 cans of soup, some crackers, and a nearly empty jar of peanut butter. The refrigerator held condiments, expired milk, and a few wrinkled apples. I rationed everything carefully, allowing myself one small meal per day. By day 3, the electricity cut off. I found the shutoff notice Mom had hidden under magazines on the counter, dated 2 weeks earlier. The house plunged into darkness each evening, and Phoenix summers meant the air conditioning was gone too. Day 5 brought the water shutoff, another hidden notice, another willful ignorance of responsibility. I couldn't shower, couldn't flush the toilet properly, couldn't even get a drink without walking to the school water fountain. Pride kept me from telling anyone at first. How could I admit my mother left me with $2, that she chose a European vacation over paying our utility bills? I wore the same clothes, washing them in the school bathroom sink during lunch. When teachers asked why I looked tired, I made up stories about staying up late reading. When classmates invited me over, I invented excuses about being grounded. At night, I lay on my mattress in the sweltering heat, listening to happy families in neighboring houses, wondering what I had done to deserve this. By day 7, hunger drove me to desperation. I started taking extra items during lunch, slipping rolls into my backpack, pocketing fruit when no one looked. The lunch lady caught me once but just gave me a sad smile and pretended not to notice. That small kindness almost broke me. What hurt most was discovering Mom's priorities before leaving. While searching for money, I found receipts in her room, a Rolex for Derek costing $8,000, designer clothes totaling $3,000, restaurant bills for single meals that could have fed me for months. She had money. She had plenty of money. She just didn't think I was worth spending it on. In her jewelry box sat expensive necklaces and bracelets, things she could have sold to ensure I had food and utilities. But she'd rather leave them gathering dust than provide for her child. I held those receipts with shaking hands, finally understanding where I ranked in her new life. Somewhere below, designer handbags and fancy dinners. Somewhere beneath Derek's approval and European adventures. $2. That's what her daughter was worth. 2 crumpled bills and a kiss on the forehead before abandoning me to figure out survival on my own. Mrs. Chen found me on day 9, digging through the apartment complex dumpster looking for cans to recycle. The elderly woman lived 2 doors down and often sat on her porch in the evenings, watching the neighborhood with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Jeannie Martinez, what on earth are you doing?" she called out, making me freeze with my hands still in the garbage. Shame flooded through me as I turned to face her, unable to form words. She hobbled over with her cane, her face shifting from confusion to horror, as she took in my unwashed hair, dirty clothes, and the bruises on my arms from climbing into dumpsters. "Child, where is your mother?" When I couldn't answer, when tears started rolling down my cheeks, she understood. "Come," she said simply, "you need a proper meal." Her apartment smelled like green tea and the Chinese herbs she kept in glass jars. She sat me at her small table and heated up rice and vegetables, watching me try not to devour it too quickly. "How long has she been gone?" she asked gently. 9 days, I whispered. "She went to Europe. She'll be back." Mrs. Chen's face hardened, but her voice remained soft. "And she left you with—" I couldn't say it out loud, just held up 2 fingers. The silence stretched between us until she sighed deeply. "You'll stay here tonight. We'll figure out something tomorrow." For 3 days, I slept on Mrs. Chen's couch, ate her simple meals, and pretended everything would be okay. She let me shower, gave me some of her granddaughter's old clothes that almost fit. But on the 4th day, she sat me down with tears in her eyes. "I can barely afford my heart medication," she explained, showing me bills that made my stomach drop. "I survive on Social Security and it's not enough. I want to help you truly, but I can't feed us both for 3 more weeks." That's when the first real betrayal hit. Mrs. Chen had found my mother's hotel information in Europe through the emergency contact card I carried. She'd called spending money she didn't have on international charges, begging my mother to come home. I sat in the corner pretending to read while listening to the one-sided conversation. "Mrs. Martinez, your daughter needs you. No, $2 is not enough for a month. She's been eating from dumpsters. Please, just send money for food at least?" The silence on Mrs. Chen's end told me everything. When she hung up, her hands shaking, she couldn't meet my eyes. "Your mother says you're being dramatic, that you have everything you need. She says this is teaching you valuable life lessons." The words hit like physical blows. My own mother, lounging in some European hotel, had dismissed my survival situation as drama. Mrs. Chen let me stay 1 more night, but I could see the strain it put on her. She gave me $10 from her grocery money and a bag of rice. "I'm sorry," she kept saying. "I'm so sorry." But I wasn't angry at her. She'd shown me more kindness than my own family. School became my next battlefield. Ms. Rodriguez, my 6th grade teacher, started noticing things. The same clothes worn multiple days. The way I lingered after lunch, hoping for leftovers. How I dozed off during lessons because sleeping in a hot, dark house meant little rest. "Jeannie, honey, is everything all right at home?" she asked one day, keeping me after class. I'd practiced my lies carefully. "Mom's just really busy with work. She's been doing double shifts." But teachers talk, and soon the cafeteria worker mentioned my food hoarding to the principal. 2 weeks into Mom's vacation, I was called into Principal Watson's office. "Jeannie, we're concerned about you. Where exactly is your mother?" My heart pounded as I spun story after story. Mom was sick with the flu. No, wait, she was caring for my sick grandmother. Actually, she was working overnight shifts at the hospital. The lies tangled together until even I couldn't keep them straight. Things escalated when I was caught taking a sandwich from a classmate's lunchbox. Sophia's turkey sandwich with real cheese and fresh lettuce looked like a feast compared to the school's free lunch I'd been surviving on. When she went to the bathroom, I grabbed it, but another student saw and reported me. Sitting in the principal's office again this time with the school counselor, Mrs. Patricia Henley, I felt the walls closing in. "Stealing food is serious, Jeannie. We need to contact your mother immediately." Panic flooded through me. If they called home, no one would answer. If they investigated, they'd find out the truth. "Please," I begged. "I'll never do it again. I was just extra hungry today. Mom packed my lunch, but I forgot it." Mrs. Henley studied me with knowing eyes. "How about this?" she said gently. "You tell me what's really going on just between us, and I'll help figure out a solution without getting you in trouble." For a moment, I almost broke. The weight of carrying this secret alone was crushing me. Mrs. Henley seemed so kind, so understanding. "You can trust me," she assured me. "This is a safe space. Nothing you tell me leaves this room." So I told her, not everything but enough, that Mom was traveling for work, that money was tight, that I was managing but struggling. She nodded sympathetically, took notes, promised to help with food assistance programs. I left her office feeling lighter, believing I'd found an ally. The very next day, Child Protective Services showed up at school. Mrs. Henley hadn't even waited 24 hours before breaking her promise. I saw them through the classroom window, two serious-looking people with badges talking to the principal. My blood turned to ice. I raised my hand, asked to use the bathroom, and never went back. The walk home took twice as long as usual because I kept doubling back, paranoid they were following me. At the house, I packed what little I could carry, mostly canned goods and water bottles. Then, I committed my third theft this time from my best friend, Sophia. Her family lived in a nicer neighborhood where people didn't lock their back doors. I snuck in while they were at her brother's soccer practice, took some food from their pantry, and left a note saying, "Sorry." I'd planned to crash at the abandoned house 2 blocks over that older kids sometimes used for parties. But when I returned to grab my backpack from behind our shed, Sophia's parents' car was in my driveway. Through the window, I watched them talking to the CPS workers, probably reporting my theft, adding another crime to my growing list. Mrs. David pointed at our dark house, shaking her head in disgust. Mr. David had his phone out, likely calling the police. My best friend sat in their car, and even from my hiding spot, I could see she was crying. That betrayal cut deepest of all. Sophia and I had been friends since 2nd grade. We'd shared secrets, dreams, promised to be each other's maid of honor someday. Now her parents were calling me a thief and a liar, which technically was true, but survival makes you do things you never imagined. I watched them drive away, knowing that friendship was dead. Mrs. David would never let Sophia near me again. Another loss to add to my growing collection. As darkness fell, I made my way to the abandoned house where I'd spend the next 3 nights learning that rock bottom has a basement, and I was still falling toward it. 3 weeks without proper nutrition, regular sleep, or basic hygiene finally caught up with me during PE class. We were running laps in the Arizona heat when the world started spinning. Black spots danced in my vision, and I heard someone screaming before realizing it was me. I collapsed on the track, my body simply refusing to continue. When I woke up, fluorescent hospital lights burned my eyes. A nurse checking my IV smiled sadly. "Welcome back, sweetie. You gave everyone quite a scare." The doctor who examined me looked increasingly grim as he documented my condition. Severe dehydration, malnutrition, infected cuts on my hands from dumpster diving, a resting heart rate that concerned him. "Where are your parents?" he asked gently. I stuck to my latest lie about Mom being at work, but my voice cracked with exhaustion. Tests revealed just how badly my body was failing. 3 weeks of 1 meal a day. Sometimes nothing had started shutting down non-essential functions. My hair was falling out. My period had stopped. I'd lost 12 pounds from an already small frame. The hospital social worker, a woman named Janet with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude, sat beside my bed with paperwork. "Jeannie, we need to contact your mother. What's her phone number?" I gave her our disconnected home line buying time. "She works during the day," I mumbled. "She'll come tonight after her shift." But hospitals have protocols, and by evening, when no parent appeared, Janet's demeanor shifted. "I've checked the emergency contacts from your school records. No one answers. Your home phone is disconnected. Jeannie, I need you to be honest with me. Where is your mother?" The questions intensified over the next day. Police officers appeared asking about my living situation. Hospital administrators discussed mounting bills with no insurance information. Janet returned repeatedly each time, pressing harder for truth. "We found utility shutoff notices at your address. Neighbors report not seeing your mother for weeks. If you don't tell us where she is, we'll have to assume you've been abandoned." That word abandoned finally broke through my defenses, but instead of confessing, I panicked. During shift change, when nurses were distracted, I pulled out my IV, changed into my dirty clothes, and slipped out through the emergency exit. Blood from the IV site dripped down my arm as I ran my weakened legs, barely carrying me through back alleys and side streets. Behind me, I heard security guards shouting, then sirens, but adrenaline pushed me forward. The abandoned house where I'd been staying no longer felt safe. CPS would check there first. Instead, I found shelter under the highway overpass where homeless camps clustered. An older woman named Marge, weathered by street life but kind in her way, shared her cardboard setup and taught me crucial lessons. "Never sleep alone," she warned. "Always keep your shoes on. Hide any food you find." For 3 nights, I learned what real rock bottom looked like. Men who stared too long at a young girl, fights over sleeping spots. The constant fear that closed your eyes meant vulnerability. I watched Marge negotiate this world with practiced ease, trading information for safety, knowing which camps to avoid after dark. She shared her meager supplies without question, never asking why someone my age was there. Maybe she already knew. Maybe she'd seen too many kids like me to be surprised anymore. Stealing became necessary for survival. I targeted grocery stores during busy hours, slipping items under my oversized shirt. Bread, peanut butter, bottles of water. Once security almost caught me, and I barely escaped through the parking lot. Each theft added weight to my conscience, but hunger is a powerful motivator. On the 4th night, under the bridge, while digging through a dumpster behind a restaurant, police flashlights caught me. "Freeze hands where we can see them." My heart exploded in panic. This was it. Foster care, juvenile detention, the end of waiting for Mom to return. But as the officers approached, I heard Marge's whistle our danger signal. In the confusion of her creating a distraction, arguing loudly about her rights, I slipped away into the darkness. The next betrayal came from Mom's sister, Aunt Paula, who lived across town in a gated community. I'd walked 8 miles to reach her house, my last hope for family help. When she opened the door, her face went through multiple emotions: surprise, disgust, fear. "Jeannie." "Oh my God, what are you doing here? You look terrible." I started explaining, but she cut me off. "I know about Diane's trip. She called me from Paris, bragging about the hotels." Hope flared in my chest. Family helps family, right? But Paula's next words crushed that hope. "I can't get involved in my sister's drama. You know how she is. If I take you in, she'll make my life hell when she returns. Besides, my husband would never agree. We have our own children to think about." She pressed $50 into my hand, guilt money, and practically pushed me off her porch. "Don't come back here," she warned. "I'll call the police if you do." Watching her door close felt like watching my last connection to normal life disappear. 3.5 weeks into Mom's vacation, I was barely surviving, sleeping in different places each night, stealing food when desperate, avoiding anyone who might recognize me. My reflection in store windows showed a ghost of who I'd been: hollow cheeks, matted hair, clothes that hung off my shrinking frame. Then, while hiding behind a shopping center, I heard familiar laughter, that bright, carefree sound that used to mean safety and love. I peered around the corner and saw Mom walking with Derek, both tanned and glowing. She wore a new sundress that probably cost more than our utility bills. He carried shopping bags from expensive stores. They'd returned early from Europe and gone shopping before even checking on me. For 20 minutes, I watched them through the window of a restaurant sharing wine and appetizers, looking like they didn't have a care in the world. She never once checked her phone, never showed any urgency to get home. Following them at a distance, I reached our house as they pulled into the driveway. Mom's shriek when she saw the dark windows, the overflowing mailbox, the notice papers taped to the door was almost satisfying. "What happened to my house?" she wailed. Derek grimaced at the unkempt lawn, the pile of newspapers. "Looks like your kid really let things go," he muttered. They entered using her key, and I slipped in through my bedroom window minutes later. Listening from my closet, I heard her fury. "Where is that ungrateful brat? Look at this mess. The electricity is off, the water too. She probably spent all the money I left on candy and toys instead of paying bills." Derek's voice was colder. "I told you she was too spoiled. Ship her off to boarding school. My cousin runs one in Utah. Very strict. That'll teach her responsibility." Mom's response chilled me. "You're right. I can't deal with this kind of behavior. She's ruining everything we've built together." When they discovered me hiding, Mom's performance was Oscar-worthy. "Where have you been? We've been home for hours, worried sick." The lie was so bold, so shameless, I almost laughed. She knew they'd just arrived, but Derek was watching, so she maintained the act. "You were supposed to use the money I left for utilities. $200, Jeannie. What did you do with it all?" I stood there speechless as she gaslit me. $2 had become 200 in her new narrative. My appearance, clearly malnourished and filthy, didn't seem to register with her at all. Derek sneered at my condition. "Look at her. This is what happens when you coddle them, Diane. She's manipulating you with this victim act." Mom nodded eagerly, desperate to stay in his good graces. "You're right. I've been too soft. Boarding school it is." That night, listening to them plan my removal over wine and takeout food they didn't offer to share, I realized something crucial. My mother was gone. This woman wearing her face was a stranger who'd traded her daughter for a chance at wealth and status. The betrayal was complete. She hadn't just left me. She'd rewritten history to make me the villain in her story. Every survival tactic I'd used, every desperate measure would be twisted into evidence of my difficult behavior. But I was 11 years old, and despite everything, a small part still hoped she'd remember who she used to be. That part would take years to die completely. For now, I curled up on my bed, listening to her laughter drift down the hall, and began planning how to survive until CPS inevitably arrived. What I didn't know then was that this nightmare was actually the beginning of my education in power patience and the long game of revenge. Child Protective Services removed me from home 2 days after Mom's return. The investigation revealed everything: the utility shutoffs, the hospital records, the police reports from concerned neighbors. Mom tried spinning her web of lies, claiming she'd left me with proper supervision and money, but the evidence was overwhelming. As they led me to the social worker's car, she had the audacity to cry, reaching for me with perfectly manicured nails. "This is for your own good," she called out. "When you learn to behave, you can come home." Derek stood behind her smirking. He'd won. I was finally out of their way. What they didn't know was that I'd already won too. While they slept off their wine that final night, I'd photographed every receipt, every European souvenir, every piece of evidence showing where their priorities lay. Those photos would serve me well in the years to come. Foster care taught me that survival required more than just making it through each day. It required strategy. My first placement with the Johnson family lasted 4 months until budget cuts meant they could only keep 2 foster kids instead of 3. The Washingtons kept me for 6 months before Mr. Washington's job transfer moved them to Colorado. The Garcias were kind but overwhelmed with their own biological children and 3 other fosters. Each home taught me different lessons. Keep your belongings in one bag for quick moves. Never get too attached. Document everything. But most importantly, use every resource available to build your future. I haunted libraries reading books on business law, real estate. While other kids played video games, I studied market trends and investment strategies. Teachers noticed my drive and helped me apply for every scholarship, every opportunity. "You're going places," Ms. Mitchell, my high school economics teacher, told me. "Just don't let your past define your future." If only she knew how much my past was fueling my future. By 14, I was working under the table at a local restaurant, saving every penny. The owner, Mr. Antonelli, paid cash and didn't ask questions about work permits. 16 brought legal employment at a retail store during days and restaurant work at night. Foster parents complained about my schedule, but I showed them my straight-A report cards and they backed off. Every dollar went into a savings account I'd opened with a sympathetic bank teller who bent rules about minimum balances. School counselors helped me apply for college scholarships, impressed by my essay about overcoming adversity. What I didn't write was how that adversity had given me a superpower, the ability to see through people's facades to their true motivations. That skill would prove invaluable in business. I graduated valedictorian with a full ride to State University for business administration. My mother didn't attend graduation. I'd heard through Aunt Paula's Christmas card that Derek had left her for a younger woman and she'd married a dentist named Richard. College became my laboratory for testing theories about power and money. While classmates partied, I interned at 3 different real estate firms, learning how property worked from every angle: buying, selling, financing, foreclosure. That last one interested me most. Professor David Chin's class on real estate law opened my eyes to possibilities. "Property is power," he taught. "Control the land, control the game." I took every class he offered, eventually becoming his research assistant. He introduced me to his network of successful investors, many of whom had also come from nothing. "Hunger makes the best entrepreneurs," one told me over coffee, "but be careful it doesn't consume you." Too late for that warning. My hunger had specific targets, and I was playing a very long game. By senior year, I'd saved $30,000 through work and smart investments in penny stocks Professor Chin had mentioned offhandedly. Not enough to be rich, but enough to start. My real estate career began at 22 with a small firm that specialized in distressed properties. I learned to spot opportunities others missed, negotiate deals that seemed impossible, and most importantly, how to research property owners' financial situations. My boss, Miranda Sterling, became an unwitting mentor. "Information is everything in this business," she'd say. "Know who owns what, who owes whom, and you'll always be 3 steps ahead." I absorbed every lesson while quietly building my own portfolio. The first property I bought was a condemned duplex in a neighborhood scheduled for revitalization. Purchased for $8,000 at auction, renovated with my own hands on weekends, sold 18 months later for $60,000. That profit funded 2 more flips, then 4, then 8. By 25, I owned a small real estate investment company with 12 employees, but I wasn't randomly choosing properties. Every purchase was strategic, slowly circling closer to my true targets. Tracking my mother's life became easier in the social media age. Her Facebook page painted a picture of desperate aspiration. Photos from charity galas she'd attended as someone's plus one. Posts about her successful business ventures that I knew from corporate records were failing MLM schemes. Her marriage to Richard the dentist lasted 3 years before he caught her stealing from his practice account. Husband number 3 was a contractor named Bill who left her for his secretary. Each relationship followed the same pattern. She'd attach herself to men with money, bleed them slowly, then act shocked when they discovered her true nature. But what interested me most were her debts. Credit card statements showing mounting balances. Business loans for failed ventures in jewelry design, then party planning, then life coaching. Each failure left her more desperate, more willing to believe the next scheme would save her. By the time she married husband number 4, a retired car dealership owner named Frank, she owed over $200,000 to various creditors. The setup took 3 years of careful planning. First, I created a shell company called Phoenix Holdings LLC, named after the city where she'd abandoned me. Through this company, I began buying her debts from creditors happy to get 60 cents on the dollar for bad loans they'd written off. Credit cards, business loans, even old utility bills from that summer. Each purchase was small enough not to raise flags spread across multiple entities I controlled. Then I researched Frank's finances, discovering his health problems had drained his savings and his adult children were circling like vultures. When Frank died of a heart attack, Mom inherited his house, but also his debts. She didn't know that I'd purchased those too. The house mortgage was transferred to another company I owned, Sunrise Equity Partners. Slowly, methodically, I'd made myself her largest creditor without her knowing it. But I wasn't ready to reveal myself yet. First, I wanted her to feel what I'd felt. The walls closing in, the desperation, the abandonment. Her descent began when I called in the first loan, a $40,000 business loan for her failed party planning venture. She scrambled to pay taking out another loan from a predatory lender. When that came due, I owned that debt too. Then the credit cards started demanding payment. One by one, her options disappeared. She tried selling the jewelry Derek had bought her, discovering most were high-quality fakes. She begged Aunt Paula for help, but Paula's own financial troubles made that impossible. I watched from afar as she posted increasingly desperate Facebook updates. Going through a rough patch, but God will provide, became anyone know about bankruptcy lawyers, which became why is life so unfair? The woman who'd left me with $2 was learning what desperation felt like. But I wanted more than her money troubles. I wanted her to understand that actions have consequences, that the daughter she'd thrown away had become the architect of her downfall. The final phase began when she received the foreclosure notice on Frank's house, the only asset she had left. She'd been making partial payments just enough to keep the banks at bay, not knowing those payments went directly to my accounts. When I instructed my lawyers to stop accepting partial payments and demand the full balance, she had 30 days to pay or vacate. I knew from my sources she'd tried everything. Loan sharks turned her down. Her credit score was too destroyed for legitimate lenders. Even her current boyfriend, a man named Steve she'd met at Frank's funeral, backed away when he learned about her debts. She was alone, afraid, and out of options. Just like I'd been at 11 years old, except she was an adult who'd made choices. I was a child who'd had none. The irony wasn't lost on me that she'd soon be homeless, possibly digging through dumpsters for survival. But I wasn't cruel enough to let it go that far. I had a different ending in mind, one that would teach lessons neither of us would forget. The morning I knocked on her door, briefcase in hand and wearing my best suit I'd practiced my words 100 times. She opened it looking haggard stress, having aged her beyond her 52 years. "Yes?" she said impatiently, not recognizing the successful woman standing before her. "Mrs. Martinez, I'm from Phoenix Holdings. We need to discuss your mortgage situation." Her face crumpled with defeat as she let me in. The house smelled of desperation and cheap wine. Bills covered every surface. Frank's furniture was gone, probably sold for cash. She collapsed on a folding chair, not even offering me a seat. "I know why you're here," she said, her voice broken. "Just tell me how long I have." "Days, hours, I've already started packing." The defeat in her voice almost made me falter. "Almost. Actually," I said, settling into the one remaining chair, "I'm here to discuss options. Phoenix Holdings has recently acquired all your outstanding debts. Every loan, every credit card, even those old utility bills from 2018. Her head snapped up, confusion replacing despair. "That's impossible. Those debts are with different companies." I pulled out a folder laying out document after document showing the paper trail. Each purchase order bore my signature as CEO of Phoenix Holdings. As understanding began to dawn, I watched the color drain from her face. "You see, Mrs. Martinez, you owe approximately $347,000 to various subsidiaries of my company. But here's the interesting part." I paused, meeting her eyes directly. "Phoenix Holdings is willing to negotiate, under certain conditions." She leaned forward eagerly, hope flickering in her eyes. "Anything. I'll do anything. I can't lose this house. It's all I have left." The same words I'd thought hiding in that closet years ago. I let the silence stretch before speaking again. "The CEO of Phoenix Holdings has a particular interest in your case. She knows about your history, how you abandoned your 11-year-old daughter with $2, how you left her to survive alone for a month while you vacationed in Europe, how you tried to send her away to boarding school rather than deal with the consequences of your neglect." Each word hit her like a physical blow. Her hands began shaking. She's particularly interested in how you've never taken responsibility, how you told people your daughter was difficult trouble to burden, how you rewrote history to make yourself the victim. How could you possibly know? She started, then stopped. Her eyes traveled over my face, searching for something familiar. I watched the exact moment recognition hit. Her gasp echoed in the empty room. Jeannie! The name sounded foreign on her lips after so many years. No, you can't be. You were just a child. A troubled, difficult child who survived, I finished. Who thrived despite you. Who built an empire from the ashes of the childhood you burned down. Hello, Mother. Though I suppose you lost the right to that title 18 years ago. She tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't support her. This is impossible. You're lying. My daughter is... What, still that 11-year-old you could manipulate and gaslight? Still someone you could blame for your failures. I'm 29 now. Mom, CEO of a real estate investment firm worth $12 million, and as of last month owner of every debt you've accumulated while chasing the lifestyle you thought you deserved. The tears came then, but I'd seen her cry before. Manipulation tears, not genuine remorse. Jeannie, sweetie, I'm so sorry. I was young and stupid. Derek convinced me you'd be fine. I never meant... Stop, I commanded, and she did. I've had 18 years to replay that morning. You handed me $2. You called it a life lesson. You chose a vacation over your child's safety. Then, when you returned and found me starving, you tried to ship me off to boarding school. You told everyone I was the problem. Do you know what happened to me in foster care? Do you care? Her sobbing intensified, but I continued. 3 different homes, working since 14, putting myself through college, building this company with nothing but determination and the anger you planted in me. And through it all, I watched you, marrying for money, scheming and failing, never once trying to find me or make amends. I wanted to find you, she protested weakly, but the state said I'd lost my rights, that contacting you could hurt your progress. I thought about you every day. Another lie. I had the court records. She'd never attempted contact, never paid a dime in support, never even asked the social workers about my well-being. Interesting, I said, pulling out more papers. Because these records show you signed away parental rights without contest. You were relieved to be free of me. But let's move past ancient history to the present. You have 30 days to vacate this house unless we can reach an agreement. She fell to her knees, actually clutching at my designer shoes. Please, Jeannie, I'm your mother. You can't do this to me. I'll die on the streets. Is that what you want, to kill your own mother? The theatrics might have worked on her string of husbands, but I was immune. Get up, I said coldly. You're embarrassing us both. And no, I don't want you dead. I want you educated. Here are my terms. I placed a contract on the coffee table. First, you'll make a public statement taking full responsibility for abandoning me. No excuses, no blaming others, just the truth. Second, you'll volunteer 30 hours a week at the Phoenix Youth Shelter, specifically working with children who've been abandoned or neglected. Third, you'll attend therapy twice a week with a specialist in narcissistic personality disorder. Dr. Sarah Winters has agreed to take you on. She gaped at the contract. And if I do these things, then you can remain in the house with a modest monthly allowance for necessities. Fail to meet any requirement and eviction proceedings begin immediately. This is blackmail. She spat some of her old fire, returning. You can't force me to admit to lies. I was a good mother doing my best. You were a difficult child who needed tough love. There it was. Even facing homelessness, she couldn't admit the truth. Then we have nothing to discuss, I said, standing to leave. The sheriff will serve eviction papers within the week. I suggest you start looking for homeless shelters, though most have waiting lists. Oh, and avoid the Phoenix Youth Shelter. I'm on the board and we have strict policies about background checks. The reality hit her like cold water. Wait, she cried. Just wait. Maybe I could have handled things differently. If I sign this, if I do what you want, you'll really let me stay. The contract is clear. Full compliance equals housing. Your choice. She signed with shaking hands, looking like she'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. But I wasn't done. One more thing. I've established the Martinez Foundation for Abandoned Children. It provides emergency support for children whose parents leave them in dangerous situations. The Foundation's story, Our Story, will be its cornerstone. You'll attend every fundraiser, every event, and listen to similar stories from other survivors. You'll face what you did not just to me, but what people like you do to innocent children. The weight of it all finally seemed to penetrate her denial. You really hate me, she whispered. Hate. I considered the word. No. Hate would mean you still have power over my emotions. This is justice. This is balance. You taught me that people need to learn independence. Remember, consider this your long overdue lesson. Over the following months, I monitored her compliance through weekly reports. The public statement was painful for her to make posted on social media and sent to local newspapers. I abandoned my 11-year-old daughter in 2018, leaving her with $2 while I vacationed in Europe for a month. She nearly died from starvation and neglect. I take full responsibility for my actions and the trauma I caused. The comments ranged from supportive of my survival to harsh condemnation of her actions. She read everyone as required. At the shelter, she struggled initially. Seeing children who'd been through similar abandonment forced her to confront the reality of what she'd done. Director Maria Santos reported that Mom often left sessions crying, overwhelmed by the stories. She's beginning to understand, Maria told me. Yesterday, a 12-year-old boy talked about eating from trash cans while his parents partied. Your mother had to excuse herself. When she returned, she actually apologized to him for what adults had put him through. Therapy proved the hardest requirement. Dr. Winters shared what she could within confidentiality limits. Narcissistic patterns run deep, she explained, but I'm seeing cracks in her defensive walls. She's starting to acknowledge the harm she caused, though she still struggles with full accountability. Month by month, I watched my mother transform, not into a perfect person, but into someone who finally understood consequences. The shelter work especially changed her. She became protective of the kids, advocating for better resources, even donating her small allowance to buy them Christmas presents. These children deserve so much more, she told me during one supervised visit. How did I not see that you deserved more? The second year brought unexpected developments. Mom discovered she had a talent for grant writing, helping the shelter secure funding for expansion. She started speaking at events about parental neglect, using our story to educate others. The woman who'd once prioritized designer bags over utilities became passionate about child welfare. I watched from a distance, conflicted. This wasn't the revenge I'd imagined. I'd wanted her broken, not rebuilt. But perhaps this was better. True justice wasn't destruction, but transformation. She was finally becoming the person she should have been, even if it came decades too late. When she sent me a letter on the anniversary of Abandonment Day, I actually read it. No excuses, no justifications, just acknowledgement of pain caused and work still needed. It didn't heal the 11-year-old still inside me, but it loosened something I'd carried for 18 years. Today, my mother lives simply in the house I own, continuing her shelter work and therapy. She's become an advocate against child neglect, sharing our story with brutal honesty. The Martinez Foundation has helped hundreds of children in crisis, funded by my success and her newfound dedication. We're not close, may never be, but we've found a kind of peace. She sends me updates about the shelter kids. I ensure she has what she needs to live with dignity. Sometimes I drive past and see her working in the garden she's planted, looking older, but somehow more real than the desperate woman who'd chased wealthy men. The $2 bill she gave me remains framed in my office, no longer a symbol of abandonment, but of transformation, both hers and mine. Last week, she left a voicemail. A girl came to the shelter today. 14, been living in cars for weeks while her parents prioritize drugs. I made sure she got immediate help, real help. I told her about you, how you survived and thrived. I hope that's okay. It was more than okay. It was the first time in 18 years I felt like I might have a mother worth knowing. Not the one who left me, but the one who finally understood why that was wrong. Recovery isn't just for addicts. Sometimes it's for mothers who lost themselves and daughters who found themselves in the wreckage. The $2 that once meant abandonment now fund hope for other forgotten children. That's better than revenge. That's redemption. Looking back, would I change anything? Maybe I'd have revealed myself sooner, started her transformation earlier, but pain shapes us in ways comfort never could. That 11-year-old girl surviving on stolen food and dumpster diving learned lessons no classroom could teach. About resilience, about self-reliance, about the power of playing the long game. My mother gave me $2 in trauma. I turned them into millions in meaning. She's finally the mother someone needs, even if that someone isn't me. And I'm the daughter I needed to become with or without her. Some stories don't end with reconciliation. Sometimes they end with recognition that broken people can still do good, that justice can be rehabilitative, and that the best revenge is becoming someone who doesn't need it anymore. Thank you for sharing this journey with me. If you've experienced abandonment, neglect, or betrayal from someone who should have protected you, I want you to know that your pain is valid and your survival is powerful. What moments in this story resonated with your own experiences? Please share in the comments below. Your story matters too. If this video helped you process your own trauma or gave you hope for transformation, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories of survival and redemption. Share this with someone who needs to know they're not alone in their struggle. Until next time, remember that your worst day doesn't define your worth, and sometimes the greatest justice is becoming everything they said you couldn't be. Stay strong, fellow survivors. Your breakthrough is coming.